and I'm here with Anna Pellizzari, materiali, and Jennifer Gamper of Material Connection. Okay, so the topic here is how materials can support the design and the innovation process in all its form. And Jennifer will start with her presentation. So please, Jennifer, we are looking forward to learn about what you're going to share with us.
Terrific. Thank you so much for having us.
Please keep the mic.
I will. Like this better? Yeah. Okay. Again, my name is Jennifer Gumpert. I'm the VP of Business Operations at Material Connection. And if you want to introduce yourself just very quickly.
Hi, I'm Anna Pellizzari, and I am Executive Director at Materiali.
Terrific. So what we're talking about today is material-minded design. The concept here is that anything and everything having to do with product development, whether it's about interior design, products within the spaces, automotive, the clothes that we're wearing, the shoes that we have on our feet are all impacted by the materials that we choose. As we look toward the future and we look at sustainability initiatives, sustainability cannot be achieved without thinking about the materials first, whether that has to do with where the materials originate from or has to do with how lightweight that material is from a shipping capacity standpoint, affecting your carbon footprint, those types of things. So we're sharing with you today material-minded design, and this is a collaboration with Design Tech. Thank you so much for having us, and a partnership between Materiali and Material Connection. Together, what we do is focus on the material aspects, material sciences, and helping companies make their products better, more durable, more sustainable, etc. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to start with the sociocultural trends. We're going to talk about trend forecasting a little bit to give you a sense of what we can expect in the next 2 to 4 years or so in fashion and design, and then of course the materials that are going to support that. To give you a bit of context into how this works is first we look at the highest level, the sociocultural. That's the macro of it, right? What are the influences in art, science, politics, etc., that people are seeing that are influencing their behavior and influencing their decision making, influencing the products that they want? So we start there. The next step down is innovation concepts. This has to do with what types of things are we seeing exactly that are lending itself to those macro trends. And then the next step is design ideation. What are those? What are they going to manifest themselves at? What colors, feelings, textures, components? What can we expect to see? And then the last step, and where we come into the frame here, is the material selection. So once we know where we're going, we know what we want to do, what it's going to look like, what interaction we're going to have. The next question is, how are we going to do it? Materials are going to be the thing that gets us there. So the first sociocultural trend that we're looking at is vintage core. And the idea here is that newer, younger generations are really having a sense of nostalgia for the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Now, I made a joke earlier this week. I don't know why anybody would want to go back to the 80s and 90s and 2000s, but don't worry, we have an answer for you. And the reason is because there is a sense among youth that there was a certain amount of innocence in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. We had this new technology, we had the internet, it was this world of possibility, but we also didn't have the global crisis that we face when it comes to global warming, et cetera, et cetera. We were living in this very carefree moment, right? That's what the youths are latching onto. They're latching onto this idea of having everything in front of you and none of the drama. The other thing they're latching onto is this idea of a pre-social media universe. They're looking for experiences that are more personal and not shared. They're more present in the moment. And that really came with the 80s, 90s, and 2000s before we really started sharing everything on social media in 2006 through 9. Just a couple of examples. I'm not going to go through all of these because we want to be mindful of time. But the one that I'll call out here, there's a couple of great examples here that kind of walk you through what are we seeing happen. But the one of note that I'd like to take a moment on is what we're saying, thrift mafia is helping to save the planet. And what this is it's actually an observation that the thrift company Depop was acquired for a staggering 1.638 billion, I think it was. It's backward for me, but 1.6 something billion dollars in 2021. And why is that astonishing? Other than it's an exorbitant amount of money, is it tells you the amount of demand that there is for vintage and thrift, right? So our younger generation is spending a lot of effort, resources, and interest in thrift shopping, whether that's in physical spaces or, as in the case with this acquisition, in online spaces. This is really key to understanding that this generation is going to be going to have expectations that they are going to be able to reuse, not to contribute and continue to contribute to waste and unnecessary items and accumulation of stuff. So that's just one note. Some other really great examples here. Feel free to take a look. I'm sure you have. Take a picture, and we'll move on to the next. The next thing that we're seeing in sociocultural trend is this digital creative mashup. This has to do with the integration and the generation of AI or generative AI. And the idea here is, how do we take that nostalgia that we just talked about, pre-technology, and apply the technology, learnings, et cetera, that we have now in 2023 and what's coming down the pike for us. Generative AI is just really in its early toddler phase. The cool thing about this is that it lends itself to applying the newest technologies to things that were a simpler time. And we've learned from our mistakes, and we've learned from a lot. And we're going to share some really great examples with you. These are a few of them, and one of the ones I want to call out here, because I think it's fun, is the Diana Reincarnate, right? There was an installation or a virtual photo shoot that had been conducted between a collaboration between Adidas and Trendland, where they used generative AI to pull in images of Princess Diana and apply them in a photo shoot for her as an Adidas photo shoot, which of course did not happen. So we're really starting to look at the ways that that type of technology can kind of blend reality, things that didn't actually happen, but they could have happened, or what would have happened if Diana had lived, for example, right? So it gives us a really unlimited amount of creativity and a way to kind of take those things that we feel nostalgia toward and apply them. And we're seeing, again, nostalgia quite a lot. If you think about Stranger Things, you see some of the installations that we're seeing in retro 80s neon, et cetera. And there's some great examples here as well. So this next section, it really starts to hone in on those innovation concepts and the application or the use of materials that are helping achieve these outcomes that go into these products that we're seeing. So our first area is back to the future. And we're just really encouraging brands to really explore these different ways that you can kind of play in and pay homage to those 80s through the 2000s nostalgia. You see that here with the T4 collection from Holloway Lee and Uma. And then, of course, the Game Boy phone charger, the watch charger. I'm going to hand things over to Annie here. She will share with you a little bit about how materials here and technologies are very, very different, but doing something really special and unique. Anna?
Thank you, Jen. So basically, we are going to explain some examples of materials and how they can sort of interpret these type of trends into something that's tangible and real. We have here an example of 3D printed objects in ceramics with a very high level of precision and with a type of language, of visual language that reminds a little bit of the 80s, but created with a new technology. So what we are saying here is that it's not just a matter of taking what was the same type of style and bringing it today with the same type of materials. We are using that type of language, but with new materials and new processes. And this is a good example of that. Anything else? Okay, great. So I'm coming back to you.
Perfect. All right, perfect. Thank you so much. The next innovation concept that we're seeing is low-tech audacity. So this is the idea of looking at items and looking at spaces in a way that really pulls in that homage, that nostalgia again. So here we see it with the PSR Digital Quartz Watch by Hawthorne. Hawthorne? I think it's Hamilton. Sorry, I just remembered. It's Hamilton. You can tell that that's a very old school style watch, but it's being updated and refreshed in honor of the 50th anniversary of that company. We also see it in the example in the Fendi runway show that took place, I believe, this year for Milan Fashion Week, for Milan Fashion Week. They had the entire space set up as a pinball disco, roller disco type situation. And the example here that Anna's going to share with you actually talks about how to use that, how to use materials to kind of lend itself to that design aesthetic.
Yeah, we are having here this type of lasered wood. It's a type of material that has been developed by several companies with different shapes. But in the end, you get the same type of mix of, let's say, sensations about the material, where you have these very natural and traditional somehow textures that's given by wood, but that's treated with lasering and also with geometrical shapes to give an also somewhat unexpected way of using wood. So you move from wood as a rigid material to wood that becomes a flexible surface. And that's thanks to a new way of applying, let's say, quite commonplace technology like lasering into a very thin surface of wood. So again, we have this mix of vintage type of look and feel given by wood, but at the same time, an updated version of it made via technology.
It doesn't get more low-tech than wood, right? Wood is pretty base. It's very, it has and it gives us a sense of something really familiar, right? But we're doing it in a way that's new and innovative and using new technologies to achieve outcomes that we couldn't have achieved before. Our next one is creative story blending. Actually, Anna, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love for you to explain, because I'm terrible at the pronunciation. Okay.
No, we were having some fun about pronouncing trompe-l'œil, which is an effect, a visual effect of relief obtained with just painting. So the surface is actually flat, but you have the feeling that something is pulling out of the surface, and that's a type of effect that's revamped in many type of designs. And also here we have another company that's creating a material that's called Marvelous, and it's an Italian company that mixes marble powder with wool waste and blends together using some resins. And we have this type of, let's say, depth that's a little bit changing. And this is obtained with the interaction of marble powder with the resin. So you have a type of irregular transparency of the material that makes it possible, this like cloudy effect given by the wool, and creating this sort of fake relief which actually doesn't exist.
Thank you so much. I think too it's interesting because the marble effect, it kind of reminds us, and we've seen a couple of installations here, there's a beautiful installation in Milan about that transparency. And I think one of the things that Anna and I have been talking about the last couple of days prepping for this presentation is this idea that there's a lot of going on in materials, in design, that create a sense of like, wait, what? How did they do that, right? That sense, that sensoriness of it is very precious. It's something that you see when we talk about these spaces, the immersive experience, the experiential use in trade shows, right? But this is that in product form. Marwell gives you a sense of transparency. You can't quite figure out what it is. And when you start to understand all the layers to it, you're like, I didn't know we could do that. So what can we do with it? You see that with marwool, you see that with the wood skin that we looked at a moment ago. So it's really interesting, and I think that's been a kind of a common theme that we're seeing pop up of how these materials are creating an experience that stays with you and creates a sense of wonderment that we're really looking for. And I think we talk a little bit more about that too in our next slide, where we're going into design ideations and kind of talking through what is it really going to look like, right? What are the looks, feels, textures that we're going to see? And the first is modesty. And modesty really is just that. After the pandemic, we're looking for those joyous moments. We're looking for things that we can look forward to, that kind of stick with us, that give us a sense of like, I'm going to put that on my shelf, and every time I look at it, it's going to make me go, right? So that's what we're doing in design now. We're looking for things that are quirky, fun, vibrant, have a little bit of sense of excitement. While the colors are very base, meaning that there's like a neutrality to them, there's also a pop of color. It's fun. It's maybe not as intense as some of the colors that are on market right now, but there's a sense of like joy, happiness. We use words here to describe it as quirky, sophisticated, uplifting. Some of these I can't read backwards, so we'll just skip those, but you got them in the right direction. We're looking at things that are squiggly. We're looking at playful textures and colors and tones and patterns, things that make us feel a little sassy, right? Anna, want to talk to us about these materials?
Yeah, I would like to shift from, well, one of these two materials is the plastic one, is called polygood. It's slabs made out of 100% recycled polystyrene from appliances, so from the recycling of appliances. And what's interesting is that they create this terrazzo effect and all other flickered and surprising effects that are very much pop in their type of language. And I would like not to talk about that material, but about this one that we have, that you have on your head, which is a soft material called Peel Sphere. It's in our library as well. And Design Tech selected it to create this arch, which is quite interesting. And it is entirely bio-based material made out of bio-waste. And again, we have this like candy-like type of effect that fits very much the type of this type of trend. You have this joyful and pleasant and like fruity texture that's a good expression of this trend.
It's a very good point. I noticed that when I came in. I was like, it always, in the I don't know if you guys have it here, it's called fruit by the foot. And it has a very similar texture. It's almost like a fruit leather, except you eat it, because we're weird in the US like that. We eat things that we probably shouldn't. But yeah, that's a great example. And I think also too, coming to polygood as well, there's again that sense of like, wait, how did they do that? How did they get that terrazzo effect? Why is this archway translucent when we find out it's a bio-based material, and then you touch it and it kind of almost has a texture you don't quite expect it to have, but yet it's fascinating in its own right. And then we have our lo-fi. So lo-fi is, again, this idea of taking things that start as very commoditized, very basic, very low tech, and adding technology to bring it into a new space. The colors and feelings that we see here are a little bit more vibrant, a little bit cooler in their own right, but they feel, again, that marrying of retro, marrying the stuff from the 80s, 90s, 1000s, but applying new technologies and systems. That might be new ways of 3D printing, for example. That's a new way of achieving something. It might be a new way of lightweighting. It might include things like, I think actually one of them we have is a gel, a submersive gel. So we'll talk about that in a second. But it's how do we take the learnings of all of the last 30 and 40 and 50 years and apply it into new ways. Anna?
Thank you. So these are the materials that we selected. So here again we have a merge of traditional and very well-known materials coming from the earth, which is clay on one side and cement on the other side, but constructed via two different 3D printing technologies and also with different purposes, both using some bio-inspired structures, where the first one is more on creating structures with very high compression strengths, able to bear very big loads with less materials, while the other one is a structure that has been created to help the reef, the coral reef, regrow again. So here we have a mix of bio-inspirations, new 3D printing technologies, and very old and traditional materials that we've been knowing for ages, basically. So I guess that was the last one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, get the applause. And yeah, very interesting. Let me understand a couple of things here. As long as I understood, those are all materials made by third companies. So is your role in this business helping the people to find out the proper material they need to answer what they're looking for?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of everything. We support, especially through materials work, we support manufacturers and suppliers helping to make that product more available and kind of get the word out about the technologies that they're working on. We also are working with brands to help them solve those problems. In a lot of cases, they're looking for drop-in solutions for sustainable alternatives to materials they're already using. And they have a lot of challenges with that because in the manufacturing process, you can't just make a change to what material you're using. So we really try to understand and assess what exactly is needed, how can we help them make that solution, and maybe there's a short-term answer and a long-term one. But we kind of work on both sides of that fence and connect, material connection, connect the supplier to the manufacturers to be able to get these products out.
Okay, so helping also companies to discover new materials they probably don't know.
Correct, yeah. And one of the things that we really, that's really special and important about what we're doing is that we have a level of expertise in materials that looks at things in an industry agnostic way.
Yeah, that's
most times when you're working with a brand, whether it's in bedding or in furniture, they're only looking at materials that are introduced to them or that they're already familiar with. So the example I often use is we might go to a bedding company, for example, with technologies from aerospace, because the challenges in aerospace for heat resistance are very similar to what you're trying to get to stay cool while you're sleeping. That's really special for them because they don't know how to look there. They're not looking at materials at the chemical level of how they're solving, what are the attributes. They're looking at what fits within what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So we really try to be very broad and bring back, and it's fun for the manufacturers too, because we'll have conversations with them, and we didn't make it for that. We're like, yeah, we know, but you could actually, and here's how you could. So it's a level of education across all the little spokes of the wheel.
Okay, and that's interesting. When you, I mean, in your presentation here, you touched mostly the aesthetical and emotional aspects of the materials, but I suppose you also with other features like weather resistance, temperature resistance, isolation, those kind of things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's also something that I think makes us really unique, is that a designer speaks a completely different language than a scientist in material sciences. So we are very adept at being able to talk about this side of things so that designers can hear it and learn it. But then kind of very much so as the undercurrent, does this solve your problem? Can this work for you? And in doing that, what's really allowing is that the brands are able to make decisions a lot faster because we're coming at it with a level of scientific support and chemistry or chemical support that we know it will work. We're not going to make recommendations that will fall out once it gets into engineering, for example, and engineering says, no, that won't happen. Well, chances are it probably will, because we've already done that level of that depth of research to make sure that it's a good fit to solve the problem.
Yeah, yeah. And well, I bet one part of your job is to find new materials, to discover new material, to scout for new materials. How fun is that?
Super fun.
I can bet.
Yeah, it's super fun. It keeps us very busy. We're always receiving materials from suppliers and manufacturers that are trying to make it known. We are looking at stuff in development at a university level that is just an idea, a concept, something brand new. It hasn't even gone anywhere yet. And then we're looking at mass commercialization in some of the big, suppliers, manufacturers, distributors like 3M and things like that. So it really is a fun way to watch and explore and see things as they happen, and to feel that sense of validation. And I joked with Anna and Gayatri too, because we'll see new technologies when we come into Milan, and then we'll go, oh, we have that one. We've had that one for a few years, and there's like this sense of like peace that you're like, we're doing good work because we're staying ahead of it, and we're able to help our clients best that way.
Yeah. And you mentioned you work also with universities, so I bet with uni labs, so maybe something also with nanoparticles manipulations, micro technologies, those kind of things. For example, I know a company, they develop a sort of leather that will be very soon used in the cars, because this leather is able to do not keep the heat from the sun. So when you leave your car in the sun, usually now, you go back and your seat is impossible to use for obvious reasons.
Put a towel down to sit down on.
And this company just manipulated, just create a nanotech product that looks like leather, but it doesn't keep the heat from the sun. So
fantastic.
I mean, it's fresh, like if you keep your car in the garage.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Give us the card.
Of course, of course.
Yes.
Yes. That's very interesting. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Anna, for sharing with us and being with us.